Hey film fans, welcome to Decentralized Pictures Talent Cast. And on today's show we have Chiang-Zeizel. Let's get after it. We are recording. Let's go. I'm Matt. That's Chiang-Zeizel, writer of Beneath the Pink Fold and winner of the Screenplay Rent Assistance Grant. Thanks for being here, Jared.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So before we jump in and talk about your project, Beneath the Pink Fold, let's give the audience a little sense of who you are, your background, how you got into film, and some of the other projects that you're working on.
Sure. I guess the quick run through of my life is born and grew up in the suburbs of Boston. Like in a very, I guess, almost cliched fashion, like a lot of filmmakers today, was a kid with their parents' camera running around the backyard, making movies with my brothers and stuff. When it came time to go to college, I felt like I had solved the whole idea of enjoying the work you do in life. I was like, if I could just keep making movies, because I was in the AV club in high school at the time. I was like, if I could keep making movies, then I can actually enjoy my life and not be miserable like all the other adults. And so, applied to some film schools, got into NYU, went there, had the best sort of 4 creative years of my life. You're just in this insular bubble, just creating. It's all art school. There's, so few essays. You're just making movies, talking about theory. It's great. Of course, then while the school was very lovely in teaching you how to make movies, how to think about art, it didn't quite prepare you for the real world as much as I think I probably would have liked. So get into the real world, and that was maybe 2009. So was it 13 years ago? And yeah, really just started doing a little bit of everything in the film industry. Had a production company with some friends, but would do a bunch of PAing work or behind the scenes work. Was in New York for a couple of years, then came out to LA. By the time I came out to LA, I was like, all right, I can't. Actually, I had a call with somebody, and they told me, it's like, so what's your in? And I say, I do everything. And they said, you can't be a jack of all trades, because then you're a master of none. Which then years later, I learned the rest of the phrase, which was jack of all trades, master of none, but still better than a master of one. Which at the time, I don't know if I still would have thrown that in the guy's face, because he was a big director. But anyways, he had said that you got to pick something to focus in on. And my choice was writing. Of course, as we know, writing is a very long tail game. So I kind of shifted that more into being always with the story. And so that included writing when I could get writing stuff, but a lot of script supervising, being sort of the guardian of the script on set, and then doing a lot of editing work, which sometimes they say is the last writer of the film is the editor. And so over the years, just been trying to push everything more towards just being able to cover everything with writing. But naturally, as we know, that sometimes doesn't happen, or you get a writing gig and then you got to do some more editing and script supervising or producing stuff. Just because this world in Hollywood is very, very lopsided. And exciting, but very without a clear path to walk along.
Yeah, that lot of good information, lot to unpackage there. But it sounds like
as much as I could.
Sure. No, that's awesome. Yeah. So obviously some good experiences along the way here, and so it's exciting to see and talk with someone like you that has been around the block, the LA block, the actual main location where things like this unfold. So I'm sure you've got a lot of good stories to tell. So we'll dial this in now and talk about your project, the recipient for the Rent Assistance Grant. So congratulations again, by the way, for Beneath the Pink Fold. So
Thank you.
so walk us through that project. I know it's in the screenplay form right now, and what was the motivation in creating that, and where are we at with that project?
So that project I've been, I guess, tooling around with for a couple years, and it really, you know, was this project where I was trying to do a couple things all at once. The story itself had been kind of bounced around my head, but really I had these various thematic ideas. I also was like, a couple years into being in LA, and I was like, you know, I'm doing all these things, but not doing what I really want to be doing. How could I do that? I was like, oh, I gotta write a script that is like under, I don't know, at least under $1 million to shoot, hopefully under 500,000 to shoot. So I went in with like a couple goals of like, I got this almost neo noir story I want to tell. There's these like philosophical themes I'm like just bouncing around my head that I want to inject, but it all has to be done under, it's basically as cheap as possible without sort of taking away. And so I started working on the story, and the first couple of drafts were just, an absolute mess because, as I'm explaining it, people are probably thinking, oh, it's like you're just trying to jam all these things in. And so over, a handful of writes and rewrites, it started to take shape. And I think I might have in the pitch video might have mentioned something or alluded to this idea of like the project being me kind of reckoning with film, and maybe even like the stuff I learned in film school, because there is this, I guess, and I'm not even quite sure like how to describe it, but we sometimes when we hear like film school kid, we think of sort of pretentious kid doing all these artsy stuff, which for better or worse, it's like, I don't want to think of myself as like some pretentious film kid. But I do love all that artsy stuff. I love all like the hidden meanings, sometimes the really heavy-handed meanings. And so I wanted to kind of understand, in a way, like why, sort of why I like this stuff, why it's looked at as pretentious. And so ultimately, I was like, all right, what I need in this story is the actual story to be relatively simple, something that you hear and you can get right on board. So it's, this guy gets this letter from sort of this estranged friend slash lover from his past, and he's basically is just pulled in, wants to know what happened, and goes off on this sort of crazy journey. And I was like, oh, okay, I got this sort of base story. Now I can pack on all this other, weird and wacky stuff, and kind of, as the sort of character explores sort of, their relationship with art and mystery and sort of story itself. There's an element of me trying to look at the same things. And so for a while, the whole thing, started as a mess, became a little bit less of a mess. And really I had reached this point where it's like, I need some like time just to sit down and like carve it out, figure out like what's working, what's not. Like it was getting there. But, as sort of we're talking a minute ago, like I was doing a lot of stuff, trying to stay afloat, pay the bills. You can't really write if you can't eat. So it was, in some, I guess, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think, have a, have my base needs taken care of. And then, so the grant itself was wonderful because it allowed me to sort of like, all right, I got this mess of a story. Let me sit down and like untangle it. And so currently that, I've gone through, since getting the grant, gone through another draft, and it's sort of out and about among my sort of trusted friends and, people who I've worked with over the years to either say like, this stuff is great, or this is terrible, this needs work, or what I imagine will be a little bit of both.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Jared. And that actually leads to my next topic of the grant itself and how it helped move the project forward. And it sounded like it allotted you some time to kind of focus on developing out that screenplay. So with that said, that's great. It's meeting the purpose of the grant. So that's great to hear. So what's the next steps? Where do you take the project from here?
So I think the next steps is, getting the feedback on this latest draft, probably doing another, half pass or so. Because I feel like when I sent it out, it was in pretty good shape. So when the notes come back, and maybe make some final tweaks, and then really start kind of, plotting out how this is going to be made, and sort of especially be made in this sort of film 3 ecosystem that DCP is helping build. And so that is building out maybe like sort of a core team, and then start figuring out like how is what are the different avenues. Is are we going to create different NFTs? What are those NFTs going to be? Is there more kind of digital memorabilia? Are they access passes? Are they something else? Are they something just additional creep scope of the story for people who get pulled in? So those are some questions that have not been answered quite yet, but really I think maybe a shorter way to say it, the next stage would be pre-production, but more specifically pre-production with film 3, very in mind and at the forefront of sort of decision making.
Okay, well, your answers are like the perfect lead-ins for my next topics. So we're gonna zero in on decentralized pictures now. So tell us about how you discovered the platform and what is its mission and its integration with Web3 and Film 3. What does that mean to you, and what do you think? What are its possibilities?
I think one thing I have gone through a lot in being out in LA, and even before I got here, like it's no secret that there is elements of gatekeeping in the film industry in Hollywood, that like probably most industries, the ones with the money really want to hold on to it and want to control it, and that every time they like give out a little money, there's this fear associated with it. Like, movies do cost a lot, and so if they put out this money and they don't get it back, then they might lose their job, and it's a very fear-based system. And so when I came across DCP, which I was looking over the question, I was trying to remember like where I first heard of it, and I don't know. It has to be like Twitter, because that's where I've been introduced to most of Film 3 Web3 stuff. But however I came across DCP, I did come across them, and it seemed to be like this sort of kind of golden bright spot in a lot of like sort of doom and gloom, which Twitter is very known for its doom and gloom. But being kind of in the mess of Hollywood itself, and then seeing DCP and seeing the mission and seeing kind of how or seeing what I think is this major issue of like fear just sort of coursing through the industry, DCP seemed to almost alleviate some of that fear. And the way that does alleviate the fear is, while it does sort of take the power, the money, the control, like away from the central point, what it also disperses is risk and fear, and people investing in it. It's not there is this almost communal effort in making a film. It isn't one studio, one production, one rich dude with a lot of money Because when it comes, the whole idea of a decentralized thing, whether it is a movie or any other thing, is that it's spread around so that you don't have this either one point of failure, this one point of control, um, and in theory, and then I guess it's a theory we believe in and support. As do I. Is that when you kind of decentralize especially the finances of something, sometimes even the decision making of something. The goal is that it ultimately comes better. It becomes more profitable for multiple people, and it just is something that can they say like any movie that gets made in Hollywood is a success, and even if it's like a total bomb, it still got made. And ultimately, I think it's like if more movies can get made, especially the ones that are a little bit riskier, just the better kind of like film library we have as I guess as a population. So I think like the mission really aligns with, it really is sort of this these beginning steps of this sort of problem I see of kind of trying to mitigate risk and fear, to ultimately have more great movies, interesting movies, unique movies out there.
Well stated. So with that said, we're in this film 3 space, and I guess it's subjective. The answer to this question is subjective of where we're at in that space. I personally feel like we're still kind of on the front end here, and Decentralized Pictures is trying to do something new and innovative, and they're kind of leading the charge here. So since you live in Los Angeles, the ultimate location for filmmaking, what is the film 3 vibe there like? Are a lot of people talking about this? Is this like the hot thing, or just like, okay, we've still got a long ways to go?
you know, for better or worse, I think it's still a long ways to go, because it's being talked about a little bit, and it's coming up more, and I've like mentioned it to people, and you at the very least, like telling them about the various grants and just money that is available, their ears perk up a little bit, but they don't quite have the whole sort of vision, and you don't even need a whole vision, but they don't maybe have the full understanding of sort of DCP goal or the film 3, kind of what it actually is. So I like to say like there's interest, especially because when there's money, there's interest, which isn't the greatest thing, but you gotta pull
It's the
people
way the
in.
world works.
Um, exactly, and I'd say people are. I feel like the people who have been doing it for a while, whether or yeah, been in the industry, just been working on film, a lot of them I think have become a little jaded, and so film 3 doesn't sort of excite them as much as I wish it did, because I think the stuff that has made them jaded, the stuff that has caused the burnout, are things that can be fixed with sort of something like DCP or film 3. um, but there's like anything new, there's a little bit of resistance, and I think actually the biggest hurdle of it all, is just the negative press that NFTs of the art world get. Like what I refer to as like JPEG monkeys. If you say NFT, that's all people think about because they've just heard of those projects, and whether they think of them as high level creative Ponzi schemes or just scams. It has these negative feelings and thoughts associated with it. And it's almost like I wish I could get people on board with the idea of NFTs and a decentralized network, and even just blockchain technology, and get them all enthusiastic about that. Like not even bringing in the film 3, and just almost if you can have them arrive at film 3 on their own, if they can pull all the pieces together, it's like, oh, what if you used NFTs to do this, and like you could be supported by the blockchain, and if they can get to that point, then I feel like they get very excited, because they, it's almost like that whole thing. It's like if you want someone to believe your point of view, have them come up with it themselves. And but I do think it's like if when people have a better understanding of the technology and the implication and sort of philosophical goals of the technology, then they can start to sort of see this potential future where it's not all so centralized from like a studio perspective.
Well stated, Jared, and that's a lot of the things that you just said. I view myself about, I mean, I love personally the whole package of DCP. I mean, I obviously the film aspect. I love the blockchain aspect. I love the film credits. I run a node myself, so I love all those aspects. But I do believe that you can kind of lose some people if you start out with, well, yeah, there's a cryptocurrency attached to DCP, and it's just like some people are just not ready for that piece of it, But if you can start out, like you said, with talking about, that the platform is designed to find artistic talents in new and innovative ways, moving beyond, the traditional top-down, very centralized approach to more of a horizontal, decentralized approach where we can find talents that traditionally would not be found using the old model using the traditional model.
Yeah, no, that I feel like you said what I like in, I don't know, 30 seconds what it took me like 3.5 minutes to say. That was very, very well said.
Yeah. So good stuff. Thank you for
Yeah.
that feedback. So okay, so we've moved. We're going to move on to the fun part of the conversation. I mean, everything's been fun here. Great dialogue. So don't overthink this. I'm just going to throw out a few things and just throw out the first word or two that comes to mind.
All right.
Okay. Film 3 is
DCP.
nice. Good start.
Yeah, I was not paid for that.
Favorite director?
Um, right now, bro, Nolan.
Okay. Yep. Good stuff coming out there. Screenplay writing is
Um, envisioning a world.
okay. Best sci-fi film no one has heard of.
Oh,
We can open this up to all genres. Just a cool film that you love that probably nobody's heard of.
it's not a sci-fi film, but it has a sci-fi film title. And some people have heard, but "Gleaming the Cube."
Gleaming the Cube.
It's
Okay.
this yeah, I think late '80s movie that stars Christian Slater as this sort of skateboarder, and I think I want to say it was a Vietnamese adopted brother of his who gets murdered, and he goes on this sort of this journey of trying to figure out what happened because it was just ruled a suicide, but because he's a skater, they got all these famous skaters of the late '80s, like Tony Hawk and Ronnie Mullen and um, probably a whole bunch of others, who all like either do the stunt work for Christian Slater or are just Christian Slater's buddies in the film, and they're solving mysteries and doing skateboarding tricks. And there's no explanation in the movie of why it's called Gleaming the Cube. And I think even in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, if you grind on this like random cube, it says Gleaming the Cube.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's a very fun movie.
Okay. As soon as this episode is over, I'm looking it up. I got to check it out. Okay. So being an LA guy, Hermosa or Manhattan Beach?
Um, Probably Manhattan Beach. I had an uncle who used to live there, and the first time I came out here, I stayed there with him. So
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so this came off of your bio, off of DCP. I noticed that you like to make pies. So what's your favorite pie to make?
my favorite pie is like I would say like an apple plus, like either so apple plus blackberries, apple plus peaches, apple plus pears. Like I love apple. That's a standard.
Right.
And trying some new thing in there with it. So apple plus pie. Sounds like
Apple
some sort of
Plus.
app and not that delicious.
That's all I'm gonna think of
Yeah.
now when I see apple pie. It's like, okay, we got to take this to the next level and put a plus there. It's got to be apples and then something. All right, awesome. Well, Jared, thanks so much for your time today. This was a lot of fun chatting with you, and best of luck with Beneath the Pink Fold and all the other projects that you're working on.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me and hear my my random thoughts. And again, thanks. Thank you DCP for the grant and just doing what you're doing.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you around.
All right, take care.